I'm usually a skeptic when it comes to paranormal stuff, but what happened to me last week has completely rattled me to my core. I can't shake it, and I need to tell someone before I lose my mind completely. I was on a solo cross-country road trip, trying to clear my head after a brutal divorce and job loss. The open road was supposed to be therapeutic, a chance to find myself again, somewhere deep in rural Kansas, miles from any town whose name I could even pronounce. My trusty Honda decided to die on me. Flat out. No warning, no sputtering, no gradual decline, just a sudden, complete shutdown. And of course, I was in the absolute middle of nowhere, with my GPS showing nothing but empty space for dozens of miles in every direction. The only thing around for what seemed like an eternity was this massive cornfield, stretching out the horizon in every conceivable direction. It was like being dropped into an ocean of green and gold, with stalks that had to be at least 8 feet tall, maybe more. The rows were perfectly straight, creating these long corridors that seemed to vanish into infinity. It was late afternoon when my car gave up, and the sun was starting to dip toward the western horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and deep orange. As dusk settled over the landscape like a heavy blanket, something changed. The stalks seemed to grow impossibly taller, their shadows deepening into black chasms that felt like they were reaching toward me. The temperature dropped noticeably, and a strange stillness fell over everything. That's when I heard it. Not the wind, because there wasn't any. It was a dry, scraping sound, like something massive was moving through the corn with deliberate, calculated steps. My heart started hammering against my ribs, so hard I thought it might burst. The sound grew closer, more distinct, accompanied by what I can only describe as whispers. They started faint at first, carried on a breeze that didn't seem to exist anywhere else, rustling like the dry leaves of the stalks themselves. But they grew closer, more distinct, like voices just on the other side of that leafy barrier having a conversation I wasn't meant to overhear. The words, if they were words, were in no language I recognized, yet somehow they felt familiar, ancient, wrong. I tried my radio desperately, scanning through every station, but found nothing but harsh static that seemed to pulse with its own malevolent rhythm. My phone showed no signal bars, completely dead to the outside world. I was utterly, completely trapped in this green prison. The cornfield seemed to close in around my car, the stalks swaying in patterns that defied the absence of wind. Their movement was unnatural, almost predatory, like they were studying me. I swear on everything I hold dear that I saw a movement within the rows. Fleeting glimpses of something dark and indistinct sliding between the stalks. It wasn't human, couldn't have been human. The shape was all wrong, too tall, too fluid, moving in ways that made my stomach lurch. The whispers became more intense, a chorus of hushed, unintelligible sounds that felt like they were pressing on the car from all sides, testing the windows, probing for weakness. I huddled down in my driver's seat, my eyes glued to the shifting stalks, praying for morning and wondering if I'd live to see it. Every rustle made me jump. Every shadow seemed to stretch and contort into impossible shapes. Hours crawled by like centuries. Morning finally broke, bringing with it a blessed, golden silence. The sounds faded completely, the whispers gone as if they'd never existed. My car, miraculously and inexplicably, sputtered back to life on the first turn of the key. I didn't look back as I floored the accelerator, leaving that endless, green labyrinth behind in my dust. But the silence doesn't feel safe anymore. Every time I see a field, any field, I get a bone-deep chill. And sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I hear it again. That dry, scraping sound. That ancient rustling. It's like something followed me out of that cornfield, something that was hunting. And I have this terrible, gnawing feeling that it didn't stop when I left. It just kept moving through the rows, through the darkness, looking for something else. Or maybe looking for me. This happened to me and my girlfriend, Sarah, last month, and I'm still trying to process it. We've been together for 3 years, and neither of us has ever experienced anything like this before. We're both pretty rational people. Sarah's a software engineer, I'm an accountant. So what I'm about to tell you goes against everything we believe about the world. We decided to escape the suffocating city heat and rented this old, charming beach house for a week through one of those vacation rental apps. The photos look perfect: weathered cedar shingles, wraparound porch, stunning ocean views. It was right on the coast in a tiny Maine fishing village, with peeling paint and creaky floors that groaned with every step, but it had undeniable character. The listing mentioned it was built in the 1920s, and you could feel the history in every warped floorboard. Plus, the ocean breeze was absolutely incredible, carrying the fresh scent of sea spray and promising relief from the brutal summer we'd been enduring. The first hint that something was seriously off was a constant, overwhelming smell of salt water. Not just outside where you'd expect it, but inside the house, permeating everything. It clung to the sheets like a damp embrace, soaked into furniture, and even our clothes reeked of brine, even on days when the windows were sealed tight and the air conditioning was running full blast. We initially thought maybe the house had some kind of moisture problem, but the smell was too pure, too oceanic to be explained by simple humidity. Then the whispers started on our second night, faint at first, like the tide sighing against the rocky shore below. But as the days passed, they'd weave their way into the actual sound of the waves, just at the edge of hearing, like voices carried on the wind. Sometimes it was just incoherent murmurs, barely distinguishable from the natural sounds of the sea. But other times, and this is what really terrified us, we'd hear our names being called softly, almost lovingly, from empty rooms. Doors would creak open on their own throughout the night, even when we double-checked that they were latched properly. We'd wake up to find windows that we swore we closed and locked, sitting slightly ajar, letting the cool night air and that persistent smell of salt. One particularly unsettling night, Sarah woke me up around 3 a.m., absolutely terrified and shaking. She swore she saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of our bed, tall and indistinct, wearing what looked like old-fashioned clothing. But when she blinked and tried to focus, it vanished like morning mist. The entire house had this oppressive, suffocating feeling, like we were constantly being watched by unseen eyes. Every room felt occupied, even when we were alone. We tried desperately to rationalize it all. Old house settling noises, the constant wind off the ocean, our imaginations running wild from too many late-night horror movies. But deep down, we both knew something was genuinely wrong. But then we talked to an elderly local woman at the small grocery store in town, and everything clicked into place. When we mentioned the address, her face went pale. She told us the house had a dark history that the rental company conveniently forgot to mention. The previous owner, an old woman named Margaret, had simply vanished decades ago without a trace. No body was ever found, no evidence of foul play. The locals said with haunted eyes, the sea just took her. But some folks say she never really left. That night, our last night, the whispers were no longer faint background noise. They were insistent, almost a low murmur of voices surrounding us from every direction. We could physically feel a presence in the room, heavy and cold despite the oppressive summer heat. The air itself seemed thick, charged with otherworldly energy. It felt like the house itself was trying to communicate something to us, something desperate and terrifying. We didn't wait for dawn. We grabbed our bags, threw them haphazardly in the car, and drove straight back home through the night, the sound of crashing waves somehow following us inland, echoing in our ears even hours away from the coast. I still hear the whispers sometimes, when the wind blows just right through our apartment windows. And the smell of salt water? It seems to follow me everywhere now, clinging to my clothes, my hair, my dreams. I wonder if that old woman, Margaret, ever truly left the house. Or if, like the Send to Sea, a part of her is still clinging to us, still whispering our names. What started as a perfect summer hiking trip turned into the most terrifying experience of our lives. Me, Jake, Immaculate, and my college roommate Marcus have been planning this 5-day backpacking adventure through the Cascade Mountains for months. We were experienced hikers, well prepared with all the right gear, GPS devices, and emergency supplies. The weather forecast was clear. Fire danger was listed as moderate, and we felt invincible as we set off into the pristine wilderness on what should have been an unforgettable week. The first 2 days were absolutely perfect. Crystal clear mountain air, stunning vistas, and that incredible sense of freedom you only get when you're miles from civilization. We'd hiked deep into the backcountry, following an old ranger trail that wound through dense stands of ancient Douglas firs and towering pines. Our campsite on the second night was beside a small alpine lake, so peaceful and serene that we stayed up late just listening to the gentle lapping of water against the rocky shore. That's when we first smelled the smoke. At first, we thought it might be another camping party with a fire, even though we hadn't seen anyone else for miles. But by dawn, the acrid smell had intensified dramatically, and the sky to the west had taken on an ominous orange glow. The wind began picking up, carrying ash and the unmistakable scent of burning timber. We checked our emergency radio and heard the devastating news. A massive wildfire had erupted overnight, driven by unexpected high winds, and was moving fast in our direction. We broke camp immediately, abandoning our carefully planned route and heading for the nearest evacuation trail. But as we hiked frantically through increasingly thick smoke, we realized we weren't alone in the forest. At first, we thought the sounds were just panicked wildlife fleeing the approaching flames. Snapping branches, rustling undergrowth, the occasional distant howl. But there was something else, something that made the hair on our necks stand up. The sounds were too deliberate, too intelligent. Something was stalking us through the smoky haze. Emma was the first to see it clearly. A massive, shadowy figure moving parallel to our path, just visible through the thick curtain of smoke and ash. It was tall, impossibly tall, with limbs that seemed too long and movements that were both fluid and predatory. When she pointed it out, we all stopped dead in our tracks. The thing had noticed us watching and had gone completely still, but we could feel its attention like a physical weight. Marcus, always a skeptic, insisted it was just smoke and shadows playing tricks on our panicked minds. But then Jake found the tracks, enormous prints in the soft earth, too large to be from any known animal, with what looked like claw marks extending far beyond where normal paws would end. The prints were fresh, following our exact route, and they were getting closer together, as if whatever made them was picking up speed. As the fire closed in behind us and the smoke grew thicker, the stalking became more aggressive. We'd catch glimpses of the creature moving through the burning trees, hear its guttural calls echoing through the forest, sometimes answering itself from multiple directions. It was using the chaos of the wildfire's cover, the roar of flames masking its approach, the thick smoke concealing its movements. The worst part was realizing that the fire wasn't random. The creature seemed to be hurting us, driving us away from safe escape routes and toward more dangerous terrain. Every time we tried to change direction, we'd see it again, positioning itself to cut off our path, forcing us deeper into the burning wilderness. We barely made out alive, rescued by a helicopter crew, just as the flames engulfed the ridge we'd been trapped on. But I still have nightmares about those glowing eyes watching us through the smoke, and I swear sometimes I can still smell that acrid, burning scent, even here in the city, far from any forest. Something ancient woke up in those flames, and I don't think it went back to sleep.